Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. We started having regular lighting problems in common areas, and the company didn't want to fix them. The second story. Boss said to do the project, and not to do other tasks. I obeyed. The third story. Neighbor didn't want my grandparents to add another floor to their house, so my grandpa went to court and got to build 2 instead. Today's first story is, if you won't fix the lights because of a potential safety hazard, what about because of a confirmed safety hazard? I live in a unit complex managed by a certain public strata corporation that cares very little about its tenants. A few years back, we had some really old common area lighting that used fluorescent tubes that needed to be replaced frequently. Strata obviously got sick of replacing them all the time, and also they did a poor job of illuminating common areas, so they installed brand new LED lamps with built-in motion-sensing dimmer switches. They'd go bright when they sense motion, and dim when idle. When installed, they were on 24 hours a day. Fast forward to about 9 months ago, we started having regular issues with the common area lighting. Usually they'd turn off for no reason and Strata would have to send a contractor out to fix them. This coincided with a nearby property development. Strata took advantage of this development by shifting the blame to the energy provider, who had supposedly flagged the light switch as being turned off as a safety risk to workers in the nearby development. But only our common area lights? Okay, that's not how electricity works. And they also started rewiring the lights to fully turn off during the day, from about 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. This was a problem, and I made sure to tell Strata this too. See, our building has a common garage area with carports that is completely undercover. It's literally built into the underside of our building. During broad daylight, if those lights are off, it's pitch black in the carports. A person could easily hide in the carports next to cars, or even in empty carports and jump people as they pass by, which isn't totally out of the question for the area. Up until about 3 months ago, Strata would begrudgingly restore the original lighting settings for about a week or two, before sending another contractor out to set them back to timed. However, when I called Strata this time, they informed me that due to a new policy, the lights could not be restored to their former settings. I asked to speak to the supervisor of the person I was speaking to, and it went a little something like this. Supervisor, the lights cannot be on at day. Me, the lights have to be on at day. Otherwise, you cannot see what you're doing in the stairwell, or in the garage area. We have elderly residents here and people with mobility issues. Someone could easily fall and break something. Supervisor, that doesn't change anything. Until someone does break something, we cannot change the lighting settings. So naturally, with this in mind, I devised some malicious, if not self-painful compliance. See, a few days prior to this call, Strata had sent me a letter demanding I dispose of a couch outside my door on the common area. I had plans to do it anyway, as it had only been there for 2 days, and the lighting situation made it hazardous to do whenever I had some free time and an extra set of hands. But I decided to throw caution to the wind, because I was determined to get those lights fixed. With the aid of one of my neighbors, we began carefully moving this couch down 3 flights of stairs. As we get to the bottom, I trip and fall down half a flight of stairs, with a 3-seater couch following close behind me. Naturally, this hurt a lot, and I ended up going to hospital for a couple of broken bones. Once I had a spare moment in the hospital, I called Strata to repeat my request. Naturally, they jumped straight to "we can't do anything until we've confirmed this is a safety hazard." They changed their tune really quick once they heard about my injuries. By the time I got out of hospital, the lights were reconfigured to be on 24 hours a day. I haven't had an issue yet. The pain was worth it, to be honest. I'd rather take the injury than one of our elderly neighbors. Edit. If I took it to a court, I'd probably come out that I'd intentionally put myself into a hazardous situation, and they'd likely throw the case out because of it. And besides, if I just keep reminding them that I could possibly talk to a lawyer about it, I get a lot more out of them than if I actually went to a lawyer. Which means I can probably get Strata to do something about the spiders that have been nesting between my window and the fly screen for about 5 years now, along with every other window on that side of the building. Edit. Actually, I wonder how deadly a spider bite can be. The local hospital's only 15 minutes away. I'm sure I could survive 30 to 45 minutes. Haha, man, you're crazy. You're a good man, albeit a little crazy. It's great that you took an injury to save an elderly person from a potentially life-threatening injury. Maybe that's a good thing. You got what you wanted, but next time don't do it again. It's dangerous. I think you can get a lawyer, tell him your story, and get a lot of money from these guys. I had a similar story. I once had a landlord who ignored when the lights on the stairs went out, even after we regularly called and reported it. He didn't care. One day I came home around midnight and the stairs to my third-floor apartment were pitch black. I wasn't afraid of burglars. I was afraid of falling and breaking my neck. That night I crawled up the stairs on my knees to get to my apartment. I called the city and reported it in the morning. That night when I got home from work, new light bulbs had been installed on the stairs. I didn't have to do any damage. If he hadn't taken care of the problem, I could have gone to the hotel and refused to pay my rent until he fixed the lights. But I needed the city to witness it. The next story is, this is the priority. A bit of MC against my awful boss. Some background. I've been working as the marketing director for a very small company for the past year or so. This job started out nice enough, but it quickly went downhill when we had about 10 of our 35 full-time staff members quit over the span of a few months. They all left for various reasons relating to the awful bosses, who I will call Stacy, poor management tactics, and her team's attitude. The staffing issue became my issue when I was forced to pick up the slack for everyone who had left. I was being asked to do a number of miscellaneous tasks, some of which I was nowhere near qualified for, all of which took away from my time to do my actual job of marketing. Despite this, Stacy would consistently make a fuss over certain marketing objectives not being completed when she wanted. I would always explain to her that because she had delegated me to do specific work elsewhere, I had no time to do the marketing projects we had brainstormed. She, of course, never listened. As time went on, we lost 5 more staff members, including our secretary. I was moved to cover her position at the front desk full-time for 5 weeks, during which I couldn't get any of my actual job doing marketing done. All my projects came to a standstill, and we even lost touch with one of our vendors who I had been working with. The minute I was able to return to my own office, Stacy and her team were hounding me for marketing materials that in their minds should have been done by now. But I explained to them that as I essentially had a different job for the last 5 weeks, I wasn't allowed any time to work on them. I was beyond frustrated at this point and began looking for other jobs. About 2 weeks ago, I got an offer for a much better company and handed in my notice to Stacy. Stacy was flustered and asked me before I leave to finish a list of projects that she had kept putting off. Specifically, she wanted a project, Project A, that she had repeatedly pushed to the back burner since December to be done. I was the only one who could do this project and she knew it, and she desperately wanted it done before I left, since its completion meant she could put off hiring my replacement for a while. In our meeting, she told me specifically that Project A was the priority, and I was to do no other work until it was completed. Okay, cue malicious compliance. One of the other reasons why it would sometimes take so long to get certain marketing projects done is because they required Stacy and her team's input and approval. This was mostly for design-related projects. I would make an initial design, get their input of what looked good, change the design, and then wait for them to approve it before sending it off to a printing or manufacturing company. All of this happened over email, and no matter how many reminders I would send, Stacy would always drag her feet in responding. It could sometimes take an entire week to do what should have taken maybe 3 hours. I mentioned this problem to Stacy before, and she again never listened. Well, guess what this final project she wanted me to complete was? A design project. And guess who spent the last week and a half dragging her feet to respond to my emails about it? Stacy. Now, I could have been working on the other items on the laundry list of work she wanted me to do, while I waited for Project A's approval. However, since she explicitly told me Project A was the priority, not a single thing on her list got done. The best part is there's not enough time for me to fully complete Project A now either, since she took so long to respond. I'll be handing off to her all the design files, most of which she can't even open, since she doesn't have the right software, and then leaving on Tuesday. After that, not my problem. I can imagine her reaction when you told her you didn't finish on time. Ah, what a shame. My dear boss. Well, ex-boss now. See ya. I hope you have documentary evidence of all their illegal activities, and I hope you send it to the appropriate authorities. Or you should notify the owner of the company that AB is interfering with everything and making people quit at a phenomenal rate, and you're also quitting because of her. This boss should be held accountable for her actions and incompetence. I know the pain of hurry up and wait, and why isn't this finished when I've assigned you several other time-consuming projects? I really have to start keeping track of the number of things my boss says should be a top priority. By definition, you can only have one top priority, right? That's why I get a priority review wheel that moves up and down with the passage of time and the whims of my boss. The relief of leaving this job will be oh so pleasant. Glad you found a better job. The last story is, their neighbors sued them for wanting to add another story to their house, so my grandparents built two. My grandpa just told me this story and I thought it would fit here. So to establish some things, the parents of my father own a couple of apartment complexes in this big city, Germany. They, as well as me and my parents, all live in this one house, but in different apartments. My father grew up in this house and never moved away. I'll probably one day move to another floor. I'm 19 years old, but don't intend to leave this house. My grandpa just told me that in the early 80s, it used to be just 1 story high, so really just a very long but super short house, if that makes any sense. I'm living on the 3rd floor at the moment, so I asked how this came to pass. What he told me was absolutely hilarious. Okay, now the story. My grandparents wanted to add another floor and story to this very long and flat house, so they obviously contacted the authorities and got all the paperwork done. Everything was fine. Then their neighbor found out about this and got really mad. He owned and still owns some other apartment complexes in this same area and on the same street. He inherited those complexes from his father. My grandparents reminded the neighbor that they had to deal with the neighbor's father, that if my grandparents wanted to add more floors to their houses, then the neighbor would comply, as long as he could also add more floors. All the neighbor had to say to this was, "Yeah, that's what my father said to you, but now he's dead and I don't want you to add another floor to your house. I'll sue you if you do that." To which my grandpa just replied in his sweetest voice, "Alright, do it." The reason why the neighbor could sue us for adding another floor was some weird clause in the German law that existed at that time, that stated that a house only could be so high, so that the houses next to it would get a specific amount of sun and air, so that it wouldn't cast too big of a shadow on the other houses around. My grandpa knew this was BS, because a few houses in this area already had like 7 floors, so it wouldn't be an inconvenience if our house would stock up. So he went to court. He told me that there literally was a court meeting and a trial on the street in front of our house. He brought a lawyer, his attorney, police officers, and some specialists from the State Department with him. There, the specialist said that our house could actually be 3 floors tall without robbing this neighbor any of his air and sun. With the attorney and the lawyer as witness, everything was settled. Then the neighbor came over and had a fit, screaming and huffing the whole time, and demanded that it should only be 1 floor at most. My grandpa said, "Alright, we'll do 1 floor, and then we're gonna see what we'll do next." They built a floor, and then because that's what the specialist said, built another. Right as when the workers wanted to start to work on the second, added, so in total 3rd floor, the neighbor comes flying, demands to know why they're doing 1 more than they said they'll do. Police were called. The police, already very tired of this whole situation, and especially with the neighbor, told my grandpa to continue building, because the concrete was already mixed and ready to use. This house is now 3 floors high. I don't really know what happened to the neighbor because I never met him, but my grandpa said that they're fine now. There was some kind of story that ended up with my grandpa actually building walls around some of the windows of the 3rd floor, because the neighbor demanded some BS about fireproof windows. Definitely fireproof if you ask me. Reminds me of a story of a friend told me. His father had a small house, but he wanted to tear it down to build a bigger house. The city said no. Then the father's plans to add an addition to the back and side, then another forward and to the other side, finished by building the original plan around and over the original small house. Now he has his original planned home about 3 times the size of the original house. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a nice day.